Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for breaking through the three critical blockages. We've got some great information to share with you today. So let's have a look at what we're going to cover. Three key things that we're going to run through, which we think are major blockages for most firms, is the first is fixing a team that doesn't quite work. If you've got a team that's not quite working, you'll understand why this is so important. The second thing we'll look at is improving your diagnostic skills. So trying to identify where are the issues in your business so that you can be working on the right stuff. There's no point just working hard, you've got to be working smart. And the third thing we'll touch on is effective business management and communication within your firm. And I don't know about you, but when I started in the profession, it was all about technical skills and compliance and selling skills. This business management stuff didn't really come up at all unless you go and source it yourself. So we're going to try and provide you with some of that today. So these practice management skills are the difference, I think, between having fun and making progress or staying stuck. And I say this with all the love in the world. I've been in the UK now for 10 years. I've known lots of people out there, many of you who have dialed in today, but others as well through the various trade bodies and just my experience in the profession. Met all sorts of people who I've known for 10 years, and some of them to me just are still stuck at 300,000, 500,000, 600,000 of turnover. And I just look at your businesses and think what you do for people is so damn amazing that it just seems a shame for the business to be stuck at these places. And if you're the owner of those businesses, it can be a little bit frustrating as well. And trust me, I know that firsthand. I've had that in my old financial planning business days, and also in my consulting firm. We experience all the same problems that you do. So what we want to try and do is help people get unstuck by focusing on some of these core issues. So look, here's an issue that keeps me awake at night that's related to what I've just been saying here. Why aren't there more firms out there, boutique firms like you, turning over 3 million quid a year and doing that at good profit margins? And I'm thinking here 25% profit margin. Why aren't there more firms out there like that? The financial planners I know do amazing work for their clients. Why isn't that being taken to a bigger audience? And I think a lot of it is wrapped up in some of this business management stuff. Now, I know some people will say, and quite rightly, that they're only looking to build a lifestyle business, and that's fine. But if you want your lifestyle business to genuinely give you a lifestyle, you still need to master these skills, I believe. You can be small and beautiful, but you have to be very efficient if you want to have the time off and the time out to spend with your family. But if you're a firm that's sort of, stuck at 400 grand a year or 700 grand a year of turnover or whatever it is, if you can, well, these are hard businesses to manage at that level. Like, you can still have lots of hassle and lots of problems. So if you can get on top of the practice management stuff, the business management skills, there's no reason why you can't then break through to 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million and have no more hassle. In fact, have a lot less hassle than you have now in running your current smallish business. And Dan Sullivan always says the first million's the hardest, and I think I'd have to agree with him there. But if you can build the skills to get you to your first million of turnover, then there's no reason why you can't carry on beyond that to 2 or 3 million. So I personally, over the next 5 or 10 years, would just love to see lots of people I know, lots of people listening in today, breaking through and getting to some of these levels. Just a question for you. Who pays the price if your business isn't quite working? Now clearly you, as the owner, pay some sort of a price, although I'm going to suggest that you sort of like what you do, and so yes, there's a price there if you're working too long or whatever, but who really pays the price? I reckon it's your family. It's your spouse, your kids. If you work late at night, you don't get home in time, or you have to work weekends, or you can't attend the swimming carnival because there's just too many hassles at work. And this is the real issue. I think we can't just blow this off. If things are not working in your firm, there's a price to be paid somewhere by someone, and it may well be you, but often it's your spouse and your family who are paying the price for things not quite working, and that just never seems quite fair to me. So what does good performance look like in a business? Financially, there's a 25% net profit margin. So that's 25% of whatever you turn over. after the owners get paid full market remuneration using what I'll call the job down the road test. Now, if you're not sure what you should get paid as the lead advisor or financial planner in a business, just think to yourself, if you took all your clients and that revenue stream and you went and got a job down the road with a competitor, how much would they pay you? And that will be a pretty good guide as to what your market salary is. Now, often the owner is not taking their full market remuneration because they're worried about keeping the business afloat. I get all that. But what good performance looks like is you get paid full market rate and there is still a 25% net profit margin on top of that. And sometimes when people do their numbers, because they're taking a reduced market salary, they say, look, I'm making a 25 or 30% net profit margin, but if I go and whack in 100, 120, 150,000 of market remuneration for you, depending on how productive you are, then often that net profit margin reduces greatly. And so I'd like to see both. The direct expenses that you pay to salespeople in the business shouldn't exceed about 40% of your turnover, and often it's less than that. Often it's about 33%. In some firms, they pay advisors about 25% of what they produce. And your other overhead, now other overhead, it's this really easy one to say, but it's everything else, every other cost of running your business. That's rent, that's phone, that's wages for paraplanners, administrators, PAs, whatever, outsourced suppliers. Your other overhead shouldn't be more than about 35% of your turnover. Now, that's no mean feat to get to that level. That's what good businesses do. But this just gives you a guide as to what financially good performance looks like. And this applies, to be fair, whether you're small or whether you're large. Culturally, what does good performance look like in your business? The number one thing for me is it's fun for you to get out of bed every day. We don't sort of drag our carcass to the office. We wake up in the morning and think, man, this is going to be a good day, because when your business works, doing great financial planning work changes the lives of the people you sit in front of. Now, I know it's not 100% of people that you talk to, but in good financial planning firms, it's a very high percentage of clients where you're doing stuff that is really making a big difference to their life, and that's a pretty cool job. That's a job where you go home and talk to your spouse and your kids at night and say, hey, guess what we did today at work? There's not a lot of people, I don't think, in the employment environment who can go and say that. So when things are going well, this is what it should feel like. Also, culturally, the team should be sharing the values of you, the owner, or if there's multiple owners, the values that you have decided are key in your business. Now, hopefully these are captured somewhere in your business plan, but if not, you could jot down somewhere, what are the 3 to 5 core values that we absolutely believe in here as a business? And typically, if you're the owner, what you believe, what your values are, will translate and be the values of the business. And when the values are shared, then it's easy for everyone to buy into the vision of what you're trying to create in the future. But then finally, good performance structurally, the team work as a team. All right, so work gets passed around to team members. It gets done easily and it gets done well, and it sort of gets done first time. This allows the owners then to take plenty of time out to think about the business, because it's the work on your business, not in your business thing, but also plenty of time off. All my best ideas come sitting under a palm tree on a beach usually, when I'm not doing anything that's work related. And if you're a visionary, an entrepreneur, an owner of a small business, then you need to be taking plenty of that time off as well, so that you can start to have those creative ideas. Just doing it, as Michael Gerber would say, doesn't really cut the mustard. So let's look at issue 1, fixing a team that doesn't quite work. And I just think this is a huge issue for most small businesses that I've worked with and see operating out there in the marketplace. Why is it so important? As I said earlier, if your current team isn't working, you'll know exactly why this is so important. It's almost impossible, even if you want to be a small firm, if you're choosing to be a small lifestyle business, it's almost impossible to stay so small that you won't need any help. Typically, you'll end up with a PA or an administrator, maybe an outsourced paraplanning service, and like it or not, you're building a team. Now, in the modern world, some of your team you'll employ, but some of your team may be outsourced or virtual. At FP Advance, our whole team is virtual. Our copywriter's in Australia. My PA works in London, but sometimes goes to New York for a month. And what we have is a team that's sort of in the modern sense of the word. They're employees, or they're engaged to do work for us. But in your business, you've got to be able to put this team together, like it or not. Even if you're trying to keep it small, there's going to be issues around getting the right people on board. And so I think this is something that a lot of firms are not, I don't think, giving it enough time to. So what are the signs that your team isn't working? One of them is that you have to check the work of everyone you hand off to. So in a lot of firms, this is not even thought of as weird. The advisor owner hands off to someone on the team, a paraplanner or administrator, and they just know it's going to come straight back to them at some point, and they're going to have to check it. And the minute you start doing that, you start having to work then longer than normal business hours, because you're flat out during the day. When do you do all this check stuff? It's either at 7:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock at night. Very hard to do between 9 and 5. And what you'll find if the team isn't working, that you'll notice that all the jobs are ending up back on your desk because there's too many mistakes. And in a professional services firm doing complex work, which is what we do, there will be errors. Okay, we know that, but I'm talking about here that there's just far too many. You're just not happy with the work that you're getting back from people. In my old firm in Sydney, when we hired a great paraplanner, she used to write financial plans, which I used to do before we hired her. And honestly, sometimes they would come back with not even a typo. That's how good she was, and that's what you're looking for in the different roles that people perform for you. When things are not working, you feel like you work for them instead of them working for you. So you hand off the job, it bounces back. They start walking out the door at 5 o'clock saying, "Hey, make sure you get this done tomorrow because we've got Joe Blow coming in," and you're the person that stays back after hours doing their work. Right? This just makes no sense. So if you've felt any frustration around this or thought this is not right, I'm with you. It's not right. Sometimes you get to a place then you just start thinking, you know what, I'm just going to do this myself. And when you get there, that's bad karma, right? We need to fix that. So what are the issues? The first thing is that putting together a team of people, this really needs your time, energy, and focus, because once you get it right, great things are going to happen. So if this is not an area that you've put a lot of time into, and trust me, look, I've made rapid fire hires, in the past where I haven't done the work, haven't done the job description, haven't put the time in, haven't spent the time on the interviewing. When you do that, it always comes back to bite you. Occasionally you get lucky, but most of the time it's a disaster. So building a team has got to be something that you spend some time on. Hiring the right people, good staff are worth 2 or 3 times the value of an average person, and trust me, they don't cost anything like 2 or 3 times the cost. Sometimes you get them for the same price as a dud. Sometimes you pay a little bit more, but you get tons more value out of it. So getting the right people on board is going to give you this productivity boost. You've also got the issue of what do we do with these 50-50 team members, and this is a real dilemma for a lot of firms I go in and consult to. If you've got someone who's a real dud, all right, you'll know who they are. If you've got someone who's a real star, you'll know who they are. But often there's a bunch of these 50-50 people where some days they seem to do good work, other days they don't. Sometimes they have a good week, sometimes they have a bad week. And sometimes these dilemmas in your mind have been dragging on for 2 or 3 years where you've persisted with these people. But what you need to be able to do is have a way of evaluating these 50-50 people and making a bloody decision. Do they stay or do they go? And once you've made that decision, then you need to follow through and take the action if they need to go. Getting rid of some existing staff, and look, I talk about this in these workshops with people like yourselves, and it can sound a bit cold and a bit hard-assed, and trust me, it's not that, and I'm not like that. I've agonized as well over having to let people go in the past in various businesses. But sometimes that's just what needs to happen, is they no longer fit. They might even be lovely people that you've worked with for a long time, but what you're finding is when you've done your evaluation and you've really got down to what do I need to make this business work, they're no longer the person. Now, if they can be moved to another role or retrained, great. But if they can't, you just got to bite the bullet and they have to go. There's a whole bunch of emotional resistance around that, I know. There's just, because you're decent human beings, you don't just want to fire people willy-nilly. Sometimes there's ego stuff attached to that. You know, this was your key hire, and they're just not working out. But I think you've just got to go away in a quiet corner, be honest with yourself, and find a way to get to a decision on those. What's the solution? You've just got to have people on your team that share your company's values. And if you're undecided about someone, this is the very first thing I would be checking. Do their values and your values match up? And when I talk about their values, I don't mean what do they tell you are their values. I mean, what do they demonstrate through their actions on a daily basis? And so if you're someone, if one of your core values is, you know, customers always come first, and one of your staff members often goes home at 5 o'clock with stuff not done that's really important to a client, you know, you might be thinking, you know, your actions don't demonstrate that value to me, and that would start to create a clash. And if there's not the same set of values in operation, trust me, the employment relationship's just not going to work. You need a process then that lets you identify which of your current team are a fit in terms of not only values and skills, which are pretty obvious, but also desire. Do they really want to do the job that you've got them in? And if they don't, you know, again, could we move them somewhere where they could be useful to the firm? And if not, you know, to be honest, they just have to go. So those that fit, stay. Those that don't, get reassigned or let go. And don't be squeamish about this. You know, make the decision and then do what you have to do. Get some HR assistance if you need to do this appropriately. Often then, you need to go back 3 steps and ensure that your recruitment process is fit for purpose. Now, again, I don't know about you, but I was never really taught anything about good recruiting. Even when you do it well, I think it's a little bit of a black art. But this is one where I would certainly be recommending you get some external help. You know, get an HR consultant in who can help you do the think work about what's the role we've got, what's the job description. They can help you with the screening CVs, the interviews, all that sort of stuff. But you've got to have a good recruitment process in place. Otherwise, all you're going to do is keep hiring new people that don't really fit. In your business, I'm going to argue that you are the most important and productive person on the team. If it's a small firm and you're the lead advisor, usually you're the key to the whole thing. If that's the case, it's critical to have great support around you so that you can unleash your productivity. And I'll give an example in a minute of how owner advisors are just weighed down and become very, very unproductive, and I'll talk about that. But if you get the right team on board, this unleashes you to do all the great stuff that you know you're capable of, but often, you know, the management stuff, and I'll use that term very loosely, starts to hold you back. So in successful firms who've put great teams together, they don't have to check the work of the team members. They hand off to someone who actually can do it better than you could do it yourself. So not only do they do what you've asked them to do, but they found 3 other things that you hadn't even thought of, and they dealt with that shit as well, and then they gave it back to you when it's all done. When that happens, in successful firms, you become freed up to do what you love and are good at, and that's the bit that unleashes the 200 or 300% increase in productivity that we were talking about earlier. So just one tip on this. If you're struggling with finding a fantastic power planner, and trust me, you're going to need one, whether they're in-house or outsourced, you're going to need someone who's an absolute genius there, smarter than you, you know, probably CFP and chartered or the whole 9 yards. But if you've got a good one, or you find a good one, the thing to do is then go and recruit more great administrators. Now, they are easier to find, all right? They are out there, and they're not very expensive. Paraplanners are hard to find at the moment, and they're bloody expensive. So if you've got one, hang on to them. But what you can also do is get loads of administrators in behind them, so that your paraplanner can be only doing the really high-level stuff. We don't want to be paying, you know, 40, 50, 60 grand for a great paraplanner and having them just sit there writing reports all day. That's really not what you want them to do. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about is improving your diagnostic skills in your business. And to do that, we're going to look at some of your financial ratios, and I'll give you a steer on this. What are your diagnostic skills like currently? You know, how good are you? It's easy to know that there's a problem, but how good are you at knowing if it's a productivity problem? You know, is this about people, process, systems? Is it a client selection problem? You know, are you working with the right types of clients? Or is it a profitability problem? You know, and would you know what to work on to resolve each one of these issues? So if we go back to your basic profitability ratios, we talk about your gross profit margin, your overhead percentage, and your net profit margin. We said before that your direct expenses, that's what you pay working directors and the sales people in your business. Those direct expenses shouldn't exceed 40% of revenue. Overheads shouldn't exceed 35%, which leaves you with 25% as a net profit margin. So what are your three key ratios? Have you ever worked these out? If you haven't, this would be something I'll be doing straight after this webinar today. But what are those percentages in your business? And more importantly, what are they then telling you about where the issues are in your business? And it's this ability to decipher this information, I think, where some of the art comes in. So certain questions to think about. You know, what is your gross profit margin? Is it at least 60%? Now, your gross profit margin, just to be clear, is the inverse of your direct expenses. So if your direct expenses are 40%, that leaves you with a gross profit margin of 60%. You'd then take off your 35 for overhead, which would leave you with 25 of net profit. But if your gross margin isn't high enough, is it because you're paying away too much of your revenue to the salespeople within your business? Now, I know there's loads of firms out there still with self-employed advisors who they're paying more than 40% of revenue. All I'd be saying is that in the final wash-up, you just cannot make a profit, or not easily make a profit, unless they do lots of the other work themselves. And to be honest, you don't want them doing their own paraplanning and admin. If you need to adjust your direct expenses to rectify your gross profit margin, how would you go about it? You know, what would you need to do? Often you'll need to change the whole value proposition to any of these advisors who are working for you. You know, you might have to give more to change that percentage they get paid. A firm I worked with a couple of years back were able to do this very, very successfully, where they started to provide more leads through their marketing, so that they made the marketing a company priority. They didn't expect them all to go out there and catch and kill their own. And this allowed the advisor in question to become a lot more productive and to work with also some on-target leads. He took a lower percentage, but what he's found is his income has increased as a result of all that, so it's a win-win for both. Next question here, what is your overhead percentage? Is it around 35%? To be honest, in a lot of small firms, it's well above that. And I guess the thing that comes out of that, if it's higher than 35, you have to ask, what is this telling me? You know, are we as efficient as we could be? You know, are we getting the most out of the people that we've got on board? I'll meet small firms that have got 3 or 4 staff turning over 500 grand, and I'll meet similar sized firms who have got 7 or 8 or 9 staff turning over 500 grand. You know, you've got to look at yourself in that situation and say, if we're the firm with more people, you know, obviously we're not nearly as productive as the other firm. What should we do about it? Same with your net profit margin. If it's not at an acceptable level, like around 25%, look, there's no need to go and jump off a bridge about that. But it's just important to think, what could we be doing? Where are the issues? You know, where's the squeeze coming from? Is it gross margin too low, or overhead too high, or often it's a bit of both? You know, what might you do about fixing some of those issues? And how would it feel if you could get to a place where you've got a 25% net profit margin and you're getting paid your full market salary for your role within the business? I've got to be honest, when firms get to that stage, the owners are feeling pretty good. So the answers to those questions are the things that you need to go away and think about if you really want to get some breakthrough and some results in your business. But just watch out for these. Here are a few common issues that firms try, but these things don't really work. The first one, small firms will often say is, look, if I could just do another 200 grand of revenue, I'd find a bit more business, all my ratios would be in good order. Now, this is really dangerous because it doesn't usually work out like that. When you do the extra 200 grand of revenue, you do find that there's more spend on marketing or premises or team, and you have to start to spend more dough. You can't just keep your overheads controlled like everyone hopes that they can. And so what you'll find is you'll just be doing an extra 200 grand of revenue and probably still not have your margins in order. So make sure you go and look at the real issues here and ask yourself, what is the real issue? You know, is it about our productivity? Are we using the right technology and systems? Are we getting the most out of it? Are we investing in our people to do that? Second one that comes up is, look, if we can just hire that new person, often when firms are overrun, they think if I could just get another administrator, that would take all the pressure off and we'd be good to go. Typically, again, that doesn't work. If you're under that much pressure, it's usually a sign that there's other issues in play here. Could be the wrong people, but it just could also be doing too much, poor process, poor use of your existing technology. So watch out for that one. If we just had more business writers, some firms think if they got a few more salespeople on board, that would be good. I'm just going to wave the huge red flag here, and some of you will have tried this, and you'd be laughing on the other end going, yeah, don't do that. Often when we go into firms with multiple salespeople, what we do is cull some of those and get it back to the two key owners or whoever the good business writers are. Good productivity for an advisor, or average productivity, sorry, is sort of 100 to 200 grand per year of revenue they manage. Good is 300 to 400,000 a year, and great is 500 to 600,000 a year. Most small firms with two owners, are not there with both of them doing 500 or 600 grand a year of revenue. And so there's a lot more to get out of yourself by building the right team around you. You don't have to go out and hire more business writers to get to your $1 million or $1.5 million of revenue. And the last one is, look, if we can just acquire that new client bank or book of business, be very, very careful of that one. Buying books of business or client banks now, mostly what you're buying is 2 or 3 good clients and then a bunch of junk that you've just spent the last 2 years trying to get rid of. So be careful about that. The same with acquiring other firms and practices. They can work, but man, that is a major headache, and don't think of it as a quick fix to getting some of these numbers in order. So we want to go further though. So we've looked at some of the profitability ratios, but the other two that firms often don't even collect or look at is what I'll call the productivity ratios and client selection ratios. And let me just touch on this. I call the productivity ratios the forgotten ratios. In my entire career as a consultant, no one has ever pulled these out and said, hey, yeah, we track all this stuff. Yet if you do, they reveal so much about you and your business. So, for example, let's say you realise you've got an efficiency problem, and so you go on a process improvement or a productivity improvement drive. How will you actually know if things have changed? Now, sure, you might see a lowering of tension in the office and less files on desks, but you really want to be able to manage this. And so tracking your productivity ratios is one way to know, is what we're doing making any difference at all? How would you reward the people who are leading the drive? What does success actually looks like? So collecting and monitoring these ratios takes a lot of the guesswork out of things, and it can be a real eye-opener for you and your team. You might even be able to benchmark yourself against other good firms in your sort of space. So when you're doing that, you want to look at these ratios collectively when you're evaluating the productivity of your sales team. How much revenue per advisor is there? How many clients per advisor? And how much net profit per advisor? I would look at these three as a group and then start to track these and think, are these improving or changing over time? Like I said, on the revenue front, good and great is more like 300,000 to 400,000, 500,000 to 600,000 of annual production that an advisor looks after. Again, you might build to that over a number of years, not in 5 minutes, but that's what you can get out of one advisor. For your staff, when you're evaluating productivity, I'd look at these ratios, things like revenue per staff, clients per staff, net profit per staff. And again, as you make changes to your business, the way that you perform, you want to see some changes in these ratios, these things improving over time. On the productivity side, if you're the lead salesperson or the key salesperson in your business, here's some stuff that you'll want to review to try and make yourself more productive. I see owners involved in too much what I call, euphemistically, management stuff. How many minutes a day or hours a day do you spend reading emails? Because that's just completely unproductive time. Someone else could do that for you. Dealing with HR issues, premises issues, technology issues, you can see the stuff on the screen. Dealing with those things makes most owners ineffective managers. Right? They're not very good at it, and also then ineffective salespeople. You've heard these stats before, but most owner-operators are probably spending only 20% or so of their time in front of clients. It should be more like 50 or 60%. And so getting some of this stuff off your plate will certainly help with improving your productivity, and these are the sort of things that come up when you start to track those ratios. How much more productive might you be as a business owner with the right support in place? So getting the right team on board as well as with the right processes. And how much more personal production could you do if you had that support in place? I think these are key questions for you to go away and think about, and that will probably help you prioritise the time and get the skills you need, or buy the skills in you need to improve the quality of the team around you. Client selection is the last one, and I'd consider these ratios as a group. You can see them on screen here: revenue per client, assets under management per client, annual recurring income per client, that sort of stuff. What in a small firm, and even firms doing 2 or 3 million for me are still small businesses if you look at any other industry. What you've got to be seeing over time is that the quality of your clients is going up. And as your firm improves, you'll find that you naturally attract better and better quality people. So when you hear stories about firms where they only take people with £1 million, trust me, if you work on the right issues, you might well be able to get to that same place. And if that sounds like pie in the sky, trust me, it's not. As you start to get the business working, better and better quality people come in, and this is why we need to track your client selection ratios to see if that's starting to happen. That will be a confirmation that what you're doing is starting to work. So in successful firms with their diagnostic skills, what they've got is they've got MI that provides insight. So it's not just numbers that tell them what they did. The MI provides insight into where the blockages are so that they can go and start to poke around in the right areas and get to work on the right issues. They also have got some skills in reading the tea leaves, I'll call it, so they know what the MI is telling them. And there might be a bit of work to get up to speed on some of that stuff. But when you do, it saves you huge amounts of time, because you don't just go and set up new projects and stuff that doesn't really work on the right issues that are going to affect change in your business. And if you can get this right, you can generate much quicker results for your effort. And when you and your team start to see forward momentum and progress, it inspires everyone to get involved and to keep pushing. If we work our asses off and nothing really changes, that can become very, very deflating, not only for you, but for your team as well. So this is a really important skill. So the last issue I want to touch on is around effective business management and communication. So how do you actually get stuff done in your business? And if you start to poke around in your financials like we've talked about, and you start to think about your team, there's going to be an awful lot of stuff that needs to get done to drive you forward, and on top of that there's all just the normal business as usual stuff that currently keeps you occupied for a lot more than 40 hours a week in most cases. So how do you get stuff done in your business? And what challenges do you face in this area? This is a really key issue to think about. There's the old saying that says business is 10% strategy and 90% execution. So my question to you is, what are your execution skills like? Most of us who run small firms, we're the visionary, the entrepreneur, we're great at coming up with new ideas, but we need to develop some skills, or we need people around us who have the skills to help us execute those ideas, to put them into action. You can go to as many webinars or seminars or conferences as you want, but if you can't go and execute some of the ideas that you pick up, nothing changes in your business and you sort of stay stuck. So getting stuff done, there are some typical issues that come up for the firms that we work with. Often there's not enough communication in the business. Now this one really grates with small firms, because the owner thinks they're communicating effectively with their team, but often they're not. What you've got is two different styles here. The owner is usually a free form, doesn't like conformity or structure or discipline. But in their role, these are key skills that actually work, because you're dealing with creative solutions to problems, coming up with new ideas. The team is usually the opposite of that. They like structure, discipline, they know it, they want to know where they're at. And so a free-flowing communication style, management by walking around and all that sort of stuff, I don't think really cuts the mustard for most of the people on your team. And they will often say, when we go and do some behind-the-scenes questioning, that they don't really know what's going on, and there's not a great process for informing them and keeping them informed on a regular basis. I always use the example here of I love you. I got married, I told my wife I loved her. If I never told her again, that wouldn't be great communication. She might be looking at me thinking, well, yeah, you need to work on this, but you know what I mean. You've got to be talking to people all the time about the issues that matter, and in business it's exactly the same thing. Not enough formal meetings is another issue, and again, some of these things rub owners up the wrong way, because they're saying, man, I left a corporate environment where all these people did was have meetings, and it was just a waste of time. And I get that. I've worked in large corporate as well, and a lot of that goes on, and it can feel really unproductive. But to go to the other extreme where we're not having enough meetings, and I'm thinking in the small firm, you need to be meeting once a week with your team formally, but not having enough formal meetings is equally as bad as having too many, like in the large corporate sense. The other killer is if we do have meetings, they're of poor quality. So there's no structure, no agenda, so there's no discipline. The owner often just dominates the discussion and talks too much. There's no timekeeping, so we don't start on time and finish on time. There's too much waffle, and basically people get bored. What happens eventually is we after we've been going for 3 months, everyone says, why the hell do we have these meetings? Because they're rubbish. We've forgotten why they were originally set up in the first place, and so they get canned. And then we go back to the situation with not enough communication. The other one that's a real killer is even if we do have meetings, the meetings don't make any difference to the progress of the firm. And the sign of a good meeting is that we get together, we talk about some formal and specific issues, and we identify problems and come up with solutions to those problems. And over the next 7 days, we do something about them until we meet again. And when you start to get that sort of, that quality from your meetings, these are the things that will help you with your execution capability. If discussions just go around in circles, then this becomes a real problem. And I think in a lot of small firms, this is exactly what's going on. And no decisions are getting made. For your communication and your business management to work, and this will help you with your execution, you have to have an effective meeting process that allows you and your team to get stuff done every week, to identify issues, decide what you're going to do about them, and to actually then move things forward. If you get some of that going, then you can start to feel like there's real progress happening in your business. It's not just going to happen by itself, and if you've been working hard for the last 2 or 3 years and haven't seen the results that you would like, some of these sorts of issues could be the key to unblocking some of that stuff. Getting stuff moving forward is the key to feeling good about your business and wanting to get out of bed every day and go to work. If you feel like you work 50 hours a week and not much changes, that can be really demotivating after a while. So in successful firms, they're communicating brilliantly with their team, but they're using a structured and a repeatable process. Issues get discussed and solved every week because everyone's been trained in how to resolve issues productively, and sometimes that requires a bit of work. But getting that right re-energizes the owners in the business because they see progress every week. It will also re-energize your team. The business can then become more profitable and more valuable for you and your family, which keeps also the support coming from home. And if you've been slogging your guts out and things are not happening, you can start to also find yourself under pressure from your partner at home, who's saying, look, is this really the best way for you to be using your time? Maybe you should go and get a proper job, and that's always a challenging discussion. I've got to say that getting the weekly meeting thing right changed our lives at FP Advance. All right, there's some structures and processes we've put in place, and this can do the same for you too. There's just some simple things that you can be doing. Like I said, focusing on solving issues was the key change for us that I think's really made a difference to us being able to advance our own cause. All right, I'm going to open this up to questions. We've covered a fair bit of stuff there, so I wanted to open this up to questions. Now, I think you'll see on your screen there is a chat box, and I think you can actually list some questions in there. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to think about your issues. And we've got a question that's come through. I'll get to that in 1 second. Just quickly, a lot of people that have tuned in today are actually coming to our practice management workshop that's towards the end of March. If you're not, you might want to check this out because we're going to spend a full day going through these 3 issues in real depth. Here's what you get. You get a full day with me. That could be good or bad. But you get 2 great financial analysis tools for diagnosing the blockages in your business, and I'll take you through those step by step with your numbers. And by the end of the day, you'll have a really good feel for how to do that on an ongoing basis, but also where the issues might be for you. You get 2 great analysis tools for evaluating your current team members and any new recruits, and these are really simple. Within 2 minutes, you'll know whether a 50-50 team member is someone to keep or to let go. We'll also give you a step-by-step approach to recruitment so you can be bringing the right people on board down the track. So if that's been a problem for you in the past, you can fix it. We'll also take you through our A to Z of a structured and repeatable weekly meeting process that will improve your execution capability out of sight. So if you're interested, I think we're going to pop some details up on screen later for that one. So keep an eye out for that. All right, so back to some questions. Okay, I've got a question here. When you talk about job down the road, in many small businesses, the owner wears different hats. Are you talking about a commercial rate as an advisor, director, compliance officer? So look, the question here is asking about the job down the road test. What's fair remuneration for you? We could get into great detail around this, like you do wear the multiple hats of advisor, company director, and maybe the compliance officer in your firm, but I'm just going to look very, very simply in your advisor role. Often the owner director isn't getting paid anything like what they would get paid if they took a job down the road with their current client bank and their current revenue. And so when I look at what do you get paid, I'm really going to look at what are you going to get paid as an advisor. We could add something on for your director roles and whatever, but I think the answer to that question is I'm looking at your sales role in the business, because often the owner is the best salesperson in the business or best advisor in the business in terms of revenue generated as well. All right, are there any other questions for people coming through? Okay, there's another great question come through here from Jody. As a small company, it can be hard to recruit the right people. Would you advise offering shares in your company to employees? Let me give you the short answer. The short answer is no, but I'm not anti it. Okay, but let me explain why. I'll say no in the first instance for this reason. A lot of firms complain about being able to recruit the right people. When you work on your recruitment process and you build some muscles in that area and you get some help from people who are really good at it, what you'll find is you can recruit good people into your business. They are out there. They're just not, easy to find, but there's plenty of people out there who will be right for your firm. And so in the first instance, I would say you want to build your skills and your muscles on the recruitment side, get really good at it. You will have some success. You will get better people on board. Eventually, once you've done that, and you, if you think then there are some key hires where you need to offer shares, look, I think I'm open to that as a possibility. I believe in the whole getting people involved and in ownership. But I think what happens sometimes is people try and use the share ownership thing as a way of overcoming a skill deficit in the recruitment space. And if you hire a dud and then they have shares in your company, that's the double disaster. So just watch out for that one. There's another question here from Duncan. What's market rate? And I assume you're referring to what's market rate for an advisor, and you've got here, is it 25 or 35% of total fee income written? Look, it varies a bit by firm. Look, we say you can pay up to 40%, but I would have thought that's for pretty good production. I know there's places out there where advisors will get paid 50 and 55%, but you don't want to be competing with that because that's just insane. What you'll find, it's probably around 33% is the norm, so about a third, and this goes back to the old accountants' rule of thumb, where they used to say you can pay a staff member, a third of what they generate in fees, because there's another third for overheads and there's another third for profit. And I sort of think that works fairly well in the advisory space as well. So if your advisors are getting paid about a third of what they generate in revenue, that's cool. Now the issue though is, Duncan, what you've got to be doing is providing then a complete value proposition for people. It's got to be a fun place to work. Where do the leads come from? If they go and catch and kill all their own leads, if I'm them, I'm going to be asking for a damn sight more than 33%. But if you've been able to build a company-led marketing process that helps generate lead flow, you've been doing training with the advisors to make them better advisors, better askers of questions, better at generating referrals from their clients, if you're investing in them and they can see that that's leading to greater revenue flow and income, then I think a 1/3 split to them and 2/3 to the business works just fine. All right, are there any other questions before we start to wrap this up? I am happy to hang around and ask any more, but if no more come through, then we'll probably bring this to a close. But look, just lastly, here are the dates for our practice management workshop. You can see we're in London on the Tuesday the 24th, Coventry on the next day, and Nuts for the day after that. It's $395 plus VAT to attend, but it's going to be a fabulous day with all the tools and templates I've told you about. If you've got any other questions on that and you want to give me a call or you want to drop me an email, just drop me an email to Brett@FP Advance and we can set up a chat and I can give you some more information. But look, thank you everyone for joining me today. I hope that was thought-provoking. I hope it's got you thinking a little bit differently about some of these issues in your own business. And like I say, if there's any follow-ups, feel free to drop me a line or give me a buzz, and happy to talk to you individually as well.